Welcome to Sleepy Science Hub. As you settle in tonight, let me know where in the world and at what time you're watching. Perhaps you're nestled beneath warm blankets in a quiet room, or maybe you're listening through gentle headphones as the evening wraps its peaceful embrace around you. Wherever you find yourself, whatever hour has brought you here, you've arrived to explore one of nature's most mysterious and essential kingdoms, the realm of fungi. These silent architects work tirelessly beneath our notice, weaving the very fabric that holds ecosystems together. Now, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Take a gentle breath, and let's begin our journey into the hidden world that exists just beneath the surface of everything we see. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the forest still holds the cool moisture of night, and the first tentative bird calls are just beginning to whisper through the trees, something extraordinary is happening in the darkness beneath your feet. While the world above sleeps, an ancient and magnificent kingdom continues its patient work. A kingdom so vast and interconnected that it spans continents, yet so subtle and quiet that most people walk through their entire lives without ever truly seeing it. This is the kingdom of fungi. And if you could somehow shrink yourself down and slip between the particles of soil, past the tangled roots and sleeping seeds, you would discover a world that defies everything you thought you knew about how life organizes itself. Here, in the spaces too small for human eyes to perceive, stretches a network of unimaginable complexity and beauty, threads finer than spider silk, more extensive than any human city, more ancient than recorded history, weaving together the living and the dead in an endless dance of connection and renewal. Imagine, if you will, that you could see with eyes sensitive enough to perceive these microscopic threads as they truly are. The forest floor, which moments ago appeared to be nothing more than fallen leaves and scattered twigs, would suddenly reveal itself as a living tapestry of incredible intricacy. Wherever you looked, you would see delicate white threads branching and rebranching in patterns more complex than lightning, more beautiful than frost crystals forming on a winter window. These threads, called hyphae, are the fundamental building blocks of fungal life, and they are everywhere, threading through every handful of soil, wrapping around every root, penetrating every piece of decomposing wood. Each individual thread is impossibly thin, often just a few thousandths of a millimeter in diameter, so fine that hundreds could pass through the eye of a needle with room to spare. Yet despite their delicate appearance, these threads possess a strength and persistence that has allowed them to inherit the earth. They grow with a patience that makes glaciers seem hurried, extending themselves cell by cell, molecule by molecule, following chemical gradients and moisture traces with the precision of the most sophisticated navigation system ever conceived. As you observe this hidden landscape, you begin to notice that these fungal threads don't grow randomly or chaotically. Instead, they follow patterns of such elegant efficiency the human engineers study them to design better networks and transportation systems. The threads branch at optimal angles to maximize their coverage while minimizing energy expenditure. They form loops and interconnections that provide multiple pathways for nutrients and information to flow, creating redundancy that ensures the network's survival even when individual threads are damaged or destroyed. The diversity of fungi in this hidden world is staggering beyond imagination. There are fungi that specialize in decomposing different types of organic matter. Some that prefer the tough lignin and wood, others that excel at breaking down the softer tissues of leaves and flowers. There are fungi that form intimate partnerships with plant roots, trading nutrients in exchanges so mutually beneficial that neither partner can thrive without the other. There are fungi that hunt other microorganisms with tiny molecular lassos, and fungi that glow with their own bioluminescent light, creating fairy rings of cold fire in the forest night. Some fungi fruit only once in their centuries-long lives, sending up a single mushroom like a message in a bottle thrown into the ocean of time. Others fruit annually, marking the seasons with their colorful caps and graceful stems. Still others never produce visible fruiting bodies at all, living their entire lives as invisible threads in the soil, known only to science through careful cultivation and DNA analysis. The scope of this fungal kingdom extends far beyond what any single forest can contain. Scientists estimate that a single teaspoon of healthy forest soil contains several miles of fungal threads, enough to wrap around a city block with length to spare. In a single forest, the total length of fungal threads in the soil extends for hundreds of thousands of miles, creating a network more extensive than a country's highway system, more complex than the internet, more vital than any human infrastructure ever built. These threads connect not just individual plants, but entire plant communities. A single fungal network might link dozens of trees, shrubs, and smaller plants across acres of forest floor, creating what scientists are just beginning to understand as a kind of biological internet, a wood wide web that allows plants to share resources, exchange information, and coordinate their responses to environmental challenges. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about this hidden kingdom is its age. While the mushrooms we see above ground might last only days or weeks before decomposing back into the soil, the fungal networks that produce them can persist for centuries or even millennia. Some of the largest and oldest living organisms on Earth are fungal networks, vast underground entities that have been growing and adapting for longer than human civilization has existed. In Oregon, scientists have discovered a single fungal individual that covers over 2,000 acres of forest floor and is estimated to be at least 2,400 years old. This ancient being was already mature when Greek philosophers were debating the nature of existence, already spanning the landscape when the Library of Alexandria was in its glory. It has survived ice ages and forest fires, droughts and floods, watching over the forest like a benevolent underground god, facilitating the lives of countless generations of trees and plants and animals. As you contemplate this vast hidden kingdom, you begin to understand that the visible world of plants and animals that we normally think of as nature is actually just the tip of an enormous iceberg. The real foundation of terrestrial life lies in this invisible realm of fungal threads, this patient network of decomposers and connectors and chemical architects that makes all other life possible. The fungi were among the first living things to colonize land from the ancient oceans, and they have been quietly shaping terrestrial ecosystems for over 400 million years. They helped create the first soils by breaking down rock and mineral into forms that plants could use. They formed the partnerships that allowed plants to establish themselves on land in the first place. They have been recycling nutrients, facilitating plant growth, and maintaining the delicate chemical balances that keep ecosystems functioning since long before flowers bloomed or birds sang or mammals walked the earth. In the growing light of dawn, as the forest begins to stir and the visible world starts its daily awakening, this hidden kingdom continues its ancient work with the same patient persistence it has shown for hundreds of millions of years. The threads grow, the networks expand, the connections strengthen, and the quiet alchemy of decomposition and renewal proceeds with the reliability of sunrise itself. This is the world we are about to explore together. A world of chemical conversations and underground alliances, of networks that span continents and relationships that have shaped the evolution of life itself. As we settle deeper into our exploration, we'll discover how these silent architects work their magic, how they build and maintain the living systems that sustain all terrestrial life, and how their ancient wisdom might help us understand our own place in the great web of existence. As the morning mist begins to lift from the forest floor, and the first rays of sunlight filter through the canopy above, something invisible but extraordinary is happening in the darkness just inches beneath your feet. If you were to kneel down and gently brush away the layer of fallen leaves, then carefully excavate a small handful of rich, dark soil, you would be holding in your palm one of the most complex and sophisticated biological systems on Earth. A living network of fungal threads so intricate and extensive that it rivals anything human technology has ever created. Each grain of soil in your hand is interconnected with every other grain by an almost incomprehensibly dense web of microscopic fungal filaments. These threads, invisible to your naked eye, but abundant beyond measure, form a three-dimensional highway system that permeates every cubic millimeter of healthy soil. To truly appreciate the scale of this network, imagine that you could somehow make these threads visible while keeping their actual size. The handful of soil in your palm would suddenly appear to glow with millions of tiny silver threads, branching and connecting like a miniature version of the neural networks in your own brain. The growth of these fungal threads follows patterns of such elegant efficiency that they seem almost too perfect to have evolved naturally. Each thread begins as a tiny spore, often no larger than a particle of dust, that has found just the right combination of moisture, nutrients, and chemical signals to trigger its awakening. The spore absorbs water from the surrounding environment, swelling gently like a seed, germinating in slow motion, until its outer wall softens enough to allow the first delicate thread to emerge. This first thread, called a germ tube, grows with a purposefulness that suggests an intelligence far beyond what we normally associate with such simple organisms. It doesn't grow randomly or chaotically, but instead follows chemical gradients in the soil with the precision of a bloodhound following a scent trail. The growing tip of the thread samples its environment constantly, tasting the soil around it for traces of nutrients, moisture, and the chemical signatures of potential partners or food sources. As the thread grows, it begins to branch, sending out lateral shoots that explore new territories while the main thread continues its forward progress. The branching follows mathematical patterns that maximize the thread's ability to capture resources while minimizing the energy required for growth. The angles of branching, the spacing between branches, and the overall architecture of the growing network all conform to principles that human engineers have only recently begun to understand and appreciate. The rate of growth, while imperceptible to human observation, is remarkable when viewed from the fungus's perspective. A single thread might extend itself by several cell lengths each hour, pushing through soil particles, squeezing between mineral grains, and gradually creating pathways where none existed before. In good conditions, with adequate moisture and nutrients, a fungal thread can grow several inches in a single day. Though this growth is spread across potentially thousands of branching tips, each adding their tiny contribution to the expanding network. The mechanics of this growth are fascinatingly sophisticated. The growing tip of each thread contains a concentrated zone of cellular machinery dedicated to expansion. Tiny vesicles carry building materials, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates from the older parts of the thread to the growing tip, where they are incorporated into new cell wall material. The process is like watching a microscopic construction site, where the building materials flow continuously from the rear to the front, allowing the structure to extend itself into new territory. But growth is only part of the story. As the fungal threads extend through the soil, they begin to encounter other threads, sometimes from the same fungal individual, sometimes from completely different species. When threads from the same organism meet, they often fuse together, creating loops and interconnections that strengthen the network and provide alternative pathways for nutrients and information to flow. These connections transform what began as a simple branching structure into something much more complex, a true network with redundant pathways and distributed functions. The fusion process itself is remarkably sophisticated. When two compatible threads encounter each other, they undergo a complex chemical recognition process, exchanging molecular signals to confirm their compatibility. If the threads are from the same individual, they merge seamlessly, their cell walls dissolving at the point of contact to create a continuous pathway. If they are from different but compatible individuals, they may form more limited connections that allow for resource exchange while maintaining their separate identities. The resulting network develops emergent properties that exceed the capabilities of any individual thread. Nutrients absorbed by threads in one part of the network can be rapidly transported to support growth in distant regions. Information about environmental conditions, the presence of food sources, harmful chemicals, or suitable partner organisms can flow through the network, allowing the entire system to respond to local conditions with a coordination that appears almost intelligent. The diversity of thread types within even a single soil sample is extraordinary. Some threads are specialized for rapid exploration, growing quickly and branching frequently to survey new territory. Others are optimized for resource transport, developing thicker walls and more efficient internal plumbing to move nutrients across long distances. Still others specialize in forming connections with plant roots or breaking down specific types of organic matter. The soil environment shapes these networks in countless subtle ways. In well-drained soils with good aeration, the threads tend to be finer and more extensively branched, creating dense mats that can capture nutrients from even the smallest particles of decomposing organic matter. In waterlogged soils with low oxygen levels, the threads often become thicker and less branched, developing specialized structures that allow them to function efficiently in anaerobic conditions. Temperature influences the growth patterns as well. In the cool soils of early spring, growth is slow and deliberate, with threads focusing their energy on establishing strong connections and building robust networks. As the soil warms through the growing season, growth accelerates, and the networks expand rapidly to take advantage of the increased availability of nutrients from decomposing plant material and active root systems. The seasonal rhythms of thread growth create a kind of underground calendar that mirrors the cycles of the visible world above. In autumn, as leaves fall and temperatures drop, the threads redirect their energy towards storage and consolidation, building up reserves of nutrients and strengthening existing connections in preparation for winter dormancy. In winter, growth slows to a near halt, but the networks remain alive and alert, ready to resume rapid expansion when spring conditions return. Perhaps most remarkably, these thread networks don't just passively follow the existing structure of the soil, they actively modify their environment to better suit their needs. The threads secrete a variety of enzymes and organic acids that can dissolve mineral particles, break down organic matter, and alter the chemical composition of the surrounding soil. Over time, this biochemical activity creates a zone of modified soil around each thread, rich in nutrients and with improved structure for both fungal growth and plant root development. The cumulative effect of millions of fungal threads growing, branching, connecting, and modifying their environment is the creation of soil structure itself. The threads act like microscopic scaffolding, holding soil particles together in stable aggregates that resist erosion and create the pore spaces necessary for air and water movement. Without this fungal framework, soil would be nothing more than a loose collection of mineral particles, incapable of supporting the complex plant communities that characterize healthy terrestrial ecosystems. As the day progresses and the forest above awakens to its daily rhythms of photosynthesis and growth, the fungal networks beneath the soil continue their patient work of exploration, connection, and construction. Each thread that extends itself brings new territory into the network. Each connection that forms strengthens the system's resilience. Each enzyme that breaks down organic matter releases nutrients that will fuel new growth above ground. This hidden world of threads operates on timescales that span from the immediate to the geological, from the split-second chemical reactions that occur at growing tips to the century-long development of mature networks that outlive generations of the plants they serve. In this quiet realm beneath our feet, the foundations of terrestrial life are constantly being renewed, maintained, and strengthened by the silent architecture of fungal threads. As the morning light strengthens and begins to penetrate deeper into the forest understory, illuminating patches of moss and fern and gentle pools of golden warmth, something truly extraordinary is unfolding in the darkness below, a phenomenon so remarkable that when scientists first discovered it, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. Deep beneath the visible tapestry of forest life, the fungal networks we've been exploring are doing something that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about how individual organisms relate to one another and how information flows through natural systems. Picture, if you will, a vast underground internet. not metaphorically, but as a literal information superhighway that connects every tree, shrub, and flowering plant in the forest through a network of fungal threads more sophisticated than any communication system humans have ever devised. This is the Wood Wide Web, and its discovery has revolutionized our understanding of how forests function, how plants communicate, and how the seemingly separate individuals in an ecosystem are actually part of an interconnected whole. To truly appreciate the marvel of this system, imagine that you could somehow tune into the chemical conversations flowing through the fungal networks beneath a single mature forest. At any given moment, thousands of messages are traveling through the thread-like highways. Warnings about insect attacks spreading from tree to tree faster than the insects themselves can move. Chemical SOS signals from drought-stressed saplings triggering responses from their larger neighbors. Nutrients flowing from areas of abundance to regions of scarcity. And coordination signals that help the entire forest community respond to seasonal changes and environmental challenges. The foundation of this remarkable communication network lies in the exquisite chemical sensitivity of fungal threads. Each hyphal tip is equipped with sophisticated molecular machinery that can detect and respond to an enormous variety of chemical signals. These detection systems are so sensitive that they can recognize individual molecules dissolved in soil water at concentrations so low they would be undetectable by even our most advanced analytical instruments. The threads can distinguish between hundreds of different chemical compounds, interpreting each one as a different word in the complex vocabulary of underground communication. When a plant root releases a chemical signal, perhaps a distress molecule indicating attack by root-feeding insects, or a recognition signal seeking to establish a partnership with compatible fungi, the nearby fungal threads detect these molecules almost instantly. The information travels through the network not just as a simple chemical gradient, but as a complex message that can be amplified, modified, and retransmitted as it moves from thread to thread throughout the network. The speed of this information transfer is truly remarkable. Chemical signals can travel through fungal networks at rates approaching several centimeters per hour, fast enough that a message originating from a tree under attack can reach potential helpers hundreds of meters away within a single day. This may seem slow compared to electronic communication, but in the context of plant time, where responses to environmental challenges typically unfold over days or weeks, it represents a form of rapid communication that allows forest communities to coordinate their responses to threats and opportunities. But the Wood Wide Web does far more than simply carry messages. It actively processes and interprets information in ways that suggest a form of distributed intelligence. When multiple distress signals from different sources arrive at a network node simultaneously, the fungal system appears to prioritize and route information based on the urgency and importance of different messages. Signals indicating immediate threats, like pathogen attacks, receive priority routing, while less urgent communications about resource availability may be delayed or buffered until network capacity allows for their transmission. The network also demonstrates a remarkable ability to learn and remember. Fungal systems that have previously experienced certain types of stress, drought, pathogen attack, or nutrient shortages develop enhanced sensitivity to the early warning signals of these conditions. When similar chemical signatures appear in the network, the response is faster and more coordinated than it was during the initial exposure. This suggests that the Wood Wide Web functions not just as a communication system, but as a form of ecosystem memory that helps forest communities adapt to recurring challenges. Perhaps most remarkably, the network appears to engage in active problem-solving behavior. When a plant sends out distress signals indicating a specific type of nutrient deficiency, the fungal network doesn't just broadcast this information randomly. Instead, it appears to route the signals specifically toward plants and network regions that have access to the needed nutrients, facilitating targeted assistance that addresses the specific problem rather than simply spreading general alarm signals throughout the system. The chemical vocabulary of this underground internet is staggeringly complex. Scientists have identified hundreds of different signaling compounds that flow through fungal networks, each with its own specific meaning and function. There are molecules that signal different types of environmental stress, compounds that indicate the presence of specific nutrients or toxins, chemicals that coordinate seasonal responses like leaf drop or flowering, and recognition signals that help establish and maintain partnerships between different species. Some of these chemical messages are remarkably sophisticated in their specificity. A plant under attack by leaf-eating caterpillars releases different warning signals than one being damaged by root-feeding beetles, and the fungal network can distinguish between these signals and route them to community members that have the appropriate defensive capabilities. Trees that have successfully defended against particular pests can share not just warning signals, but actual defensive compounds through the network, providing chemical assistance to their neighbors. The Wood Wide Web also facilitates a form of resource sharing that operates like a sophisticated economic system. Plants with access to abundant resources, perhaps a tree in a sunny clearing with exceptional access to light, or a shrub growing near a rich deposit of mineral nutrients, can export their surplus resources through the fungal network to support community members growing in less favorable conditions. In return, these recipient plants may later reciprocate when their own circumstances improve, creating a system of mutual support that benefits the entire forest community. This resource sharing operates with a precision that suggests active management by the fungal partners. The networks appear to monitor the resource status of connected plants continuously, redirecting flows of nutrients, water, and energy in response to changing conditions. During drought periods, water may flow preferentially toward the most drought-stressed plants. During the growing season, nutrients may be directed toward young plants that are establishing themselves, while mature plants that have completed their annual growth may receive fewer resources. The network even demonstrates what appears to be investment behavior, directing extra resources toward young, vigorous plants that show promise for future contributions to the community while reducing support for plants that appear to be declining or unhealthy. This suggests that the Wood Wide Web operates not just as a communication and resource-sharing system, but as a form of ecosystem-level decision-making system that actively manages forest resources for long-term community health. The scale of these underground networks defies easy comprehension. A single large tree may be connected through fungal networks to dozens of other trees, hundreds of smaller plants, and thousands of fungal partners, creating a web of relationships that extends across entire watersheds. These connections are not random, but are organized in patterns that suggest optimization for both information flow and resource distribution. Scientists studying these networks have discovered that they often have a structure similar to other complex networks found in nature and technology, with highly connected hub nodes that serve as major routing centers and more specialized peripheral connections that serve local communities. The largest, oldest trees in a forest often serve as major network hubs, with extensive fungal connections that allow them to coordinate responses across large areas and serve as resource banks that can support the entire community during difficult periods. As the day progresses and the forest above engages in its visible activities of photosynthesis and growth, the invisible Wood Wide Web continues its patient work of connection and coordination. Chemical messages flow through the networks like digital packets through the internet, carrying the information that allows this community of seemingly separate organisms to function as a coordinated whole. Resources flow from areas of abundance to regions of need, creating a form of ecosystem-level metabolism that maintains the health and resilience of the entire forest community. In this hidden realm of chemical communication and networked intelligence, the traditional boundaries between individual organisms begin to blur, revealing a more fundamental truth about how life organizes itself at the ecosystem level. The forest reveals itself to be not just a collection of competing individuals, but a superorganism whose various parts communicate, cooperate, and coordinate their activities through the sophisticated networks provided by their fungal partners. As the afternoon sun filters through the canopy above, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the forest floor, One of the most beautiful and intimate partnerships in the natural world is unfolding in the darkness just beneath the surface. Here, in the quiet spaces between soil particles, something extraordinary happens when fungal threads encounter plant roots. A meeting that results in one of evolution's most successful collaborations. A partnership so mutually beneficial and so finely tuned that it has shaped the development of terrestrial life for hundreds of millions of years. If you could somehow shrink yourself down to witness this encounter at the molecular level, you would see something that resembles a carefully choreographed dance more than a random biological event. As a fungal thread approaches a plant root, both organisms begin to communicate through an increasingly complex exchange of chemical signals, like two strangers gradually learning each other's language. The root releases specific molecules that signal its identity, its nutritional status, and its willingness to form a partnership. The fungal thread responds with its own chemical signature, indicating its species, its capabilities, and its compatibility with this particular plant partner. This initial chemical conversation can continue for hours or even days, as both organisms assess whether a partnership will be mutually beneficial. The fungus evaluates whether the plant is healthy enough to provide reliable supplies of carbohydrates and other organic compounds. The plant, in turn, somehow assesses whether the fungus offers access to the nutrients and services it needs most. Only when both partners agree to the collaboration does the real magic begin. The formation of a mycorrhizal partnership, the technical name for this fungal root alliance, involves a remarkable transformation of both organisms. The fungal threads begin to modify their structure and metabolism specifically to serve their plant partner, while the plant root undergoes its own changes to accommodate and support its fungal ally. Neither organism will ever be quite the same again, having committed to a form of biological cooperation that is more intimate than marriage and often more enduring than human lifetimes. The most common type of this partnership involves the fungal threads actually penetrating into the root cells themselves, creating structures called arbuscules that look remarkably like tiny trees branching within the plant cells. These arbuscules serve as the interface for one of nature's most sophisticated trading systems, a biological marketplace where fungus and plant exchange resources with an efficiency and fairness that human economists can only admire. The basic trade that forms the foundation of this partnership is elegantly simple. The plant provides the fungus with carbohydrates produced through photosynthesis, while the fungus provides the plant with nutrients and services that the root system could never obtain on its own. But like any successful long-term relationship, the reality of this partnership is far more complex and nuanced than this simple exchange might suggest. The plant's contribution to the partnership goes far beyond just providing carbohydrates. Through photosynthesis, plants convert sunlight into chemical energy in the form of sugars, and they share a significant portion of these precious energy-rich compounds with their fungal partners. Some plants dedicate as much as 20 to 30% of all the energy they capture from sunlight to supporting their fungal allies, a level of investment that demonstrates just how valuable these partnerships are to plant survival and success. But the fungal contribution to the partnership is even more remarkable in its scope and sophistication. The fungal threads essentially serve as an extension of the plant's root system, but an extension with capabilities that far exceed anything the plant could achieve on its own. While plant roots are relatively thick and inflexible, limited in where they can grow and what they can access, fungal threads are incredibly fine and can penetrate into soil spaces that roots could never reach. Through this extended fungal root system, plants gain access to a vastly expanded territory for nutrient gathering. A plant that might have access to the nutrients in just a few cubic feet of soil through its own roots can suddenly tap into the resources of several cubic yards through its fungal partnerships. This expanded reach is particularly crucial for obtaining nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, which often exist in very low concentrations in soil and require extensive searching to locate in sufficient quantities. The fungal partners bring sophisticated chemical capabilities to the relationship as well. While plant roots are limited in their ability to break down complex organic matter or extract nutrients from mineral particles, fungi excel at both these processes. The fungal threads secrete a wide variety of enzymes that can break down organic matter, releasing nutrients that would otherwise remain locked away and unavailable to plants. They can also secrete acids and other compounds that dissolve mineral particles, extracting essential nutrients directly from rock and soil particles. Perhaps most remarkably, the fungal partners serve as a kind of biological internet that connects plants to a vast network of information and resources. Through their fungal allies, plants can access the chemical communication networks we explored earlier, receiving warnings about environmental threats, coordinating responses to seasonal changes, and even sharing resources with other plants during times of stress or scarcity. The partnership also provides plants with sophisticated protection services that go far beyond simple nutrient gathering. Many mycorrhizal fungi produce compounds that actively protect plant roots from pathogenic bacteria, viruses, and harmful fungi. These protective chemicals create a defensive barrier around the root system, preventing harmful organisms from establishing infections while allowing beneficial microbes to thrive. Some fungal partners even provide their plants with enhanced tolerance to environmental stresses like drought, extreme temperatures, and toxic chemicals in the soil. The fungal networks can help plants access water from deeper soil layers during dry periods, and they can sequester harmful chemicals, preventing them from reaching the plant's sensitive tissues. The specificity and sophistication of these partnerships is truly remarkable. Different species of fungi form partnerships with different types of plants, and these relationships are often so specific that certain plants can only thrive when partnered with particular fungal species. This specificity has evolved over millions of years, resulting in partnerships that are perfectly tuned to the needs and capabilities of both organisms. Some partnerships are exclusive and monogamous, with a single plant species forming relationships only with one or two closely related fungal species. Others are more open and polygamous, with plants maintaining partnerships with dozens of different fungal species simultaneously, each providing different services and accessing different resources. The plants somehow manage these multiple relationships, allocating their carbohydrate investments among different fungal partners based on the services each provides and the current needs of the plant. The seasonal rhythms of these partnerships reflect the changing needs of both organisms throughout the year. During the spring and early summer, when plants are actively growing and have high nutrient demands, the fungal partners focus their efforts on nutrient gathering and transport. During the late summer and fall, when plants are preparing for winter and have surplus carbohydrates to share, the fungi may shift their focus toward building up their own nutrient reserves and expanding their network infrastructure. Winter brings its own unique dynamics to these partnerships. While the above-ground portions of many plants become dormant or die back, the fungal networks remain active beneath the soil, continuing to process nutrients and maintain the infrastructure that will support rapid plant growth when spring returns. Some fungi even provide a form of winter care for their plant partners, supplying stored nutrients during periods when photosynthesis is impossible. The evolutionary history of these partnerships stretches back to the very origins of terrestrial life. When plants first began to colonize land from their aquatic origins, they faced the enormous challenge of extracting nutrients from soil, a completely new environment that required capabilities they had never needed in their watery homes. The partnerships with fungi provided the solution to this challenge, and it's likely that plants could never have successfully colonized land without these fungal allies. Today, the vast majority of plant species on Earth maintain mycorrhizal partnerships, and these relationships are so fundamental to plant ecology that healthy terrestrial ecosystems are virtually impossible without them. The partnerships have co-evolved to such a degree that many plants and fungi are completely dependent on each other for survival. Neither partner can complete its life cycle or maintain healthy populations without the other. As the afternoon light begins to soften and the forest prepares for the transition toward evening, these ancient partnerships continue their patient work of cooperation and mutual support. Deep beneath the visible world of leaves and flowers, in the intimate darkness of soil spaces, fungal threads and plant roots continue their quiet collaboration, sharing resources and information in an endless cycle of giving and receiving that has sustained terrestrial life for hundreds of millions of years. These partnerships remind us that collaboration, rather than competition, may be the most fundamental principle underlying the success of life on Earth. In the gentle meeting of fungal thread and plant root, we see a model of cooperation so successful and enduring that it has literally shaped the evolution of our planet's ecosystems, creating the foundation upon which all terrestrial life depends. As evening begins to settle over the forest, and the golden light grows softer and more diffused through the canopy, a profound transformation is taking place all around us, so gentle and gradual that it escapes our notice, yet so fundamental to the continuation of life that without it, the world as we know it would cease to exist within a matter of years. This is the quiet work of decomposition, and fungi are the master practitioners of this essential art, the gentle alchemists who transform death back into life with a patience and thoroughness that has sustained the cycles of terrestrial existence for hundreds of millions of years. If you were to settle quietly on the forest floor and observe with the enhanced perception of deep time, watching not for minutes or hours, but for months and seasons, you would witness one of nature's most beautiful and essential processes unfolding before you. Every fallen leaf, every broken branch, every flower that has completed its brief moment of glory, every creature that has reached the end of its journey, becomes the raw material for this gentle transformation that ensures nothing is ever truly lost, that every molecule that once participated in life will have the opportunity to participate in life again. The process begins almost immediately after death, though so subtly that it seems at first as if nothing is happening at all. Within hours of a leaf falling to the forest floor, microscopic fungal spores that have been waiting patiently in the air and soil begin to sense the chemical signals that indicate the presence of newly available organic matter. These spores, each one a tiny package of potential life, no larger than a particle of dust, begin to absorb moisture from their surroundings and prepare for the remarkable work ahead. The first changes are almost imperceptible. A slight softening of the leaf's surface, a barely detectable change in color, a subtle shift in texture that suggests the beginning of transformation. But beneath this quiet exterior, extraordinary processes are already underway. Fungal spores are germinating, sending out their first tentative threads into the deceased plant tissue, beginning the patient work of breaking down complex organic molecules into simpler components that can be recycled back into the ecosystem. The fungi that specialize in this work of decomposition are among nature's most sophisticated chemists, equipped with an arsenal of enzymes that can break down virtually every type of organic molecule that exists in living tissue. They produce enzymes that can dismantle the tough cellulose fibers that give plant tissues their structure, others that can break down the lignin compounds that make wood hard and durable, and still others that can process the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that store energy and nutrients in living cells. But this is not a violent or destructive process. It unfolds with a gentleness that seems almost reverential, as if the fungi understand the sacred nature of their work. The decomposition proceeds gradually, molecule by molecule, allowing the transformation to happen at a pace that prevents the buildup of toxic byproducts and ensures that nutrients are released slowly enough to be captured and reused by living plants rather than being lost to the environment. Watch a fallen log as it progresses through the stages of decomposition, and you'll observe a succession of different fungal species, each specialized for different aspects of the breakdown process. The first fungi to colonize fresh deadwood are often relatively simple species that specialize in breaking down the easily accessible starches and sugars in the sapwood. These pioneer decomposers prepare the way for more specialized fungi that can tackle the tougher structural components of the wood. As months pass, you might notice the appearance of the first visible signs of fungal activity, perhaps a delicate coating of white threads across the surface of the log, or the emergence of small, colorful mushrooms that fruit from the decaying wood. These visible manifestations are just the tip of the iceberg, representing a tiny fraction of the fungal activity taking place within the log itself, where vast networks of threads are slowly but systematically dismantling the wood's complex structure. The different species of decomposer fungi have evolved remarkably specific roles in this process. Some specialize in the initial colonization and breakdown of fresh organic matter, working quickly to establish their presence before competing organisms can gain a foothold. Others are specialists in breaking down the toughest components of plant tissue, the lignin and cellulose that give wood its strength and durability. Still others focus on the final stages of decomposition, processing the most resistant organic compounds and ensuring that virtually nothing remains unused. This specialization creates a kind of assembly line of decomposition, where different fungi take responsibility for different stages of the breakdown process. As one species completes its work and exhausts its preferred food sources, it creates conditions that favor the next species in the succession, which takes over and continues the transformation. This orderly progression ensures that decomposition proceeds efficiently while minimizing waste and maximizing the recovery of nutrients. The chemical processes involved in fungal decomposition are marvels of biological engineering. Fungi secrete their digestive enzymes outside their cells, essentially performing external digestion that breaks down complex organic matter in the surrounding environment before absorbing the resulting simple compounds. This external digestion allows fungi to process materials that are far too large and complex to bring inside their cells, enabling them to tackle everything from microscopic organoparticles to massive tree trunks. The enzymes themselves are masterpieces of molecular design, each one precisely crafted to break specific chemical bonds while leaving others intact. Some fungal enzymes can snip the long chains of cellulose molecules into smaller fragments, while others specialize in attacking the complex three-dimensional structure of lignin, the compound that makes wood so resistant to decay. Working together, these enzymes can completely dismantle even the most resistant plant materials, reducing them to simple compounds that can be easily absorbed and reused. The process of decomposition also plays a crucial role in soil formation and maintenance. As fungi break down organic matter, they release nutrients directly into the soil in forms that plants can readily absorb and use. This nutrient cycling is essential for maintaining the fertility of forest soils, ensuring that the elements necessary for plant growth remain available in the ecosystem rather than being permanently locked away in dead plant material. But the contribution of decomposer fungi goes far beyond simple nutrient release. The process of decomposition also contributes to soil structure, as fungal threads binding together particles of partially decomposed organic matter with mineral soil components, creating the stable aggregates that give healthy soil its characteristic crumbly texture and excellent drainage properties. Without this fungal contribution to soil structure, forest soils would quickly become compacted and waterlogged, unable to support the diverse plant communities that characterize healthy terrestrial ecosystems. The timing and rate of decomposition are carefully regulated by environmental conditions, ensuring that the process proceeds at an optimal pace for ecosystem health. During warm, moist conditions, decomposition accelerates, rapidly breaking down the large quantities of organic matter that accumulate during productive growing seasons. During cool, dry periods, the process slows down, conserving organic matter and preventing the excessive loss of nutrients from the ecosystem. This environmental regulation of decomposition creates a natural storage and release system for nutrients that helps stabilize ecosystem productivity across seasonal and annual variations in conditions. During productive periods when plants are generating large quantities of organic matter, much of it is stored in partially decomposed form in the soil. During less productive periods, this stored organic matter continues to release nutrients, maintaining soil fertility even when new organic inputs are limited. The diversity of decomposer fungi is truly staggering, with different species specialized for breaking down different types of organic matter under different environmental conditions. There are fungi that specialize in decomposing needle-leaved evergreen foliage, others that focus on broad-leaved deciduous material, and still others that specialize in breaking down the woody tissues of different tree species. This specialization ensures that virtually every type of organic matter produced by forest ecosystems has fungi specifically adapted to recycle it efficiently. Some of the most remarkable decomposer fungi are those that specialize in breaking down the most resistant organic materials. The heartwood of long-lived trees, the waxy cuticles of evergreen needles, and the complex chemical compounds that plants produce to defend themselves against decay. These specialist decomposers often work very slowly, taking decades or even centuries to completely process their preferred substrates. But their patient persistence ensures that even the most resistant organic matter eventually rejoins the cycle of life. As the day transitions toward night and the forest settles into its evening rhythms, the work of decomposition continues with the same patient persistence it has shown for millions of years. In the gathering darkness, countless fungal threads continue their gentle alchemy, transforming yesterday's life into tomorrow's possibilities, ensuring that the great cycles of death and rebirth that sustain all terrestrial life continue their eternal dance. Through their quiet work, these gentle decomposers maintain the foundation upon which all forest life depends, proving that sometimes the most essential work is also the most invisible, the most humble, and the most beautiful. As twilight deepens and the forest transitions into its nocturnal phase, with the last calls of day birds giving way to the gentle rustling of night creatures beginning their activities, something remarkable becomes apparent when you consider the broader landscape around you. Every contour of the forest floor, every patch of rich soil, every microhabitat that supports the countless forms of life visible and invisible has been shaped and modified by the patient work of fungi. These organisms are not merely passive participants in their environment. They're active ecosystem engineers, constantly modifying their surroundings in ways that create the physical and chemical conditions necessary for other forms of life to thrive. To truly appreciate the scope of this engineering work, imagine the forest floor not as a static landscape, but as a dynamic construction site where countless microscopic architects have been working for thousands of years to create the perfect living environment. Every handful of soil you might scoop up represents the accumulated result of fungal engineering, threads that have bound mineral particles together into stable aggregates, created channels for air and water movement, and built the three-dimensional structure that makes soil a living medium rather than just crushed rock. The engineering work begins at the smallest scale, with individual fungal threads modifying their immediate surroundings as they grow. Each thread secretes a sticky coating of proteins and polysaccharides that acts like biological cement, binding soil particles together around the thread itself. As the thread grows and branches, it creates an intricate scaffolding that holds soil particles in precisely the right arrangement to optimize the movement of air, water, and nutrients through the soil matrix. This binding action is so effective that soil held together by fungal threads can resist erosion forces that would quickly wash away unprotected mineral particles. The fungal networks create a living fabric that weaves through the soil, preventing the loss of valuable topsoil during heavy rains while simultaneously maintaining the porous structure necessary for healthy root growth and water infiltration. But fungi don't just bind existing soil particles together. They actively create new soil through their patient work of rock weathering. Fungal threads can penetrate into the smallest cracks and crevices in bedrock, where they secrete acids and other chemicals that slowly dissolve mineral components, releasing nutrients and gradually breaking solid rock down into the smaller particles that will eventually become soil. This process operates on geological timescales, with fungal communities slowly extending the depth and extent of soil layers over thousands of years. The chemical engineering performed by fungi is equally impressive. As fungal threads grow through the soil, they continuously modify the local chemistry around them, adjusting pH levels, concentrating or dispersing nutrients, and creating microenvironments with precisely the chemical conditions needed by their plant partners and other soil organisms. Different species of fungi create different chemical environments, leading to a complex mosaic of microhabitats within even a small area of forest floor. This chemical modification extends to the creation of entirely new chemical compounds that don't exist anywhere else in nature. Many fungi produce unique organic compounds, antibiotics, growth regulators, and signaling molecules that influence the behavior and development of other organisms in their vicinity. These fungal chemicals can suppress harmful bacteria while promoting beneficial ones, regulate the growth of competing plants, and coordinate the activities of soil animals and other microorganisms. The physical architecture created by fungal networks provides essential habitat structure for countless other soil organisms. The spaces between fungal threads create a complex network of channels and chambers that serve as highways and homes for bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, springtails, and countless other microscopic animals. Without this fungal infrastructure, soil would be a largely uninhabitable environment for most of these organisms, lacking both the physical spaces they need for movement and shelter and the chemical conditions necessary for their survival. Fungi also engineer the water relationships within forest ecosystems in sophisticated ways. The extensive networks of fungal threads create pathways that help distribute water throughout the soil, moving moisture from areas of abundance to regions where it's needed. During dry periods, fungal networks can transport water from deeper soil layers to the surface zones where plant roots are most active. During periods of excess moisture, the same networks help drain water away from root zones, preventing waterlogging that could damage plant health. The engineering of nutrient distribution is perhaps one of fungi's most sophisticated capabilities. Through their extensive networks, fungi create a kind of circulatory system for forest ecosystems, moving nutrients from areas where they're abundant to locations where they're scarce. This nutrient redistribution operates on multiple scales simultaneously, from the microscopic movement of individual molecules between adjacent soil particles to the large-scale transport of resources across entire forest communities. Fungi engineer temporal as well as spatial patterns in nutrient availability. By storing nutrients during periods of abundance and releasing them during times of scarcity, fungal networks create a buffering system that helps stabilize ecosystem productivity across seasonal and annual variations in environmental conditions. This temporal engineering helps ensure that nutrients are available when plants need them most, during periods of active growth and reproduction. The modification of light environments represents another form of fungal ecosystem engineering. Many fungi produce pigments and other compounds that influence how light penetrates through forest canopies and soil layers. Some fungal pigments can capture and concentrate light energy, creating localized warm spots that promote biological activity during cool periods. Others can filter or scatter light in ways that create the optimal lighting conditions for their plant partners and other organisms. Fungi also engineer the acoustic environment of forest ecosystems, though this is one of their most subtle and least understood capabilities. The physical structure created by fungal networks influences how sound travels through soil and forest floor materials, potentially affecting how soil organisms communicate with each other and respond to environmental cues. The dense networks of fungal threads may serve as biological sound channels, transmitting vibrations and acoustic signals through the underground environment. Temperature engineering is another remarkable capability of fungal systems. Large fungal networks can influence local temperature patterns through their effects on soil thermal properties. The organic matter produced by fungal decomposition activity acts as insulation, moderating soil temperature fluctuations and creating more stable thermal environments for other soil organisms. Some fungi can even generate small amounts of heat through their metabolic activities, creating warm microenvironments that support biological activity during cool periods. The engineering of succession patterns represents one of fungi's most far-reaching influences on ecosystem development. Different species of fungi create environmental conditions that favor different types of plants, and the sequence of fungal community changes following disturbances like forest fires or windstorms helps determine how plant communities will develop over time. By modifying soil chemistry, structure, and biology, fungi essentially program the trajectory of ecosystem recovery and development. Fungi also engineer diversity patterns within ecosystems, creating the heterogeneous environmental conditions that allow multiple species to coexist in the same area. Through their varied chemical and physical modifications of local environments, fungi create a mosaic of microhabitats, each with slightly different conditions that favor different species. This environmental heterogeneity is essential for maintaining the high levels of biodiversity that characterize healthy forest ecosystems. The scale of fungal ecosystem engineering extends far beyond individual forest sites. Large fungal networks can influence regional patterns of soil development, hydrology, and even climate through their effects on carbon storage and greenhouse gas emissions. The carbon sequestered in fungal biomass and the stable organic matter they create represents a significant component of terrestrial carbon storage, influencing global carbon cycles and climate patterns. Perhaps most remarkably, fungi engineer evolutionary pressures that influence the development of other species over long time periods. The environmental conditions created by fungal activities provide selective pressures that shape the evolution of plants, animals, and other microorganisms. Many of the adaptations we see in forest organisms, from plant root structures to animal burrowing behaviors, have evolved in response to the fungal engineered environments in which these species have developed. As the night deepens and the forest settles into its darkest hours, the work of these ecosystem engineers continues with the same patient persistence they have shown for hundreds of millions of years. In the quiet darkness beneath our feet, fungal networks continue their sophisticated work of environmental modification, creating and maintaining the complex physical, chemical, and biological conditions that make terrestrial life possible. Through their engineering activities, these humble organisms have literally constructed the foundation upon which all land-based ecosystems depend, proving that the most profound influences on our world often come from the smallest and most overlooked organisms. In the deep stillness of the forest night, when the air is cool and calm and filled with the gentle sounds of nocturnal life settling into its rhythms, there is something profoundly peaceful about contemplating one of fungi's most beautiful and essential roles, their work as healers and restorers of damaged ecosystems. Like skilled physicians attending to wounded patients, fungi possess an extraordinary ability to diagnose environmental problems, mobilize healing resources, and guide damaged landscapes back toward health and wholeness with a patience and wisdom that spans decades or even centuries. To understand this healing work, imagine walking through a forest that has recently experienced some form of disturbance, perhaps an area where a windstorm has toppled large trees, creating sudden openings in the canopy and exposing patches of soil to direct sunlight and erosion. To most observers, such a scene might appear chaotic and damaged, a disruption of the forest's natural order. But to those who understand the ways of fungi, this disturbance represents not destruction but opportunity, a chance for the forest's healing systems to demonstrate their remarkable capabilities. Within hours of such a disturbance, fungal spores that have been waiting patiently in the soil and air begin to sense the changed conditions and respond accordingly. These are often different species from those that dominated the undisturbed forest, pioneer fungi that specialize in the rapid colonization of disturbed areas and the initiation of healing processes. Like first responders arriving at the scene of an emergency, these fungi immediately begin the work of stabilizing conditions and preventing further damage. The first priority in any healing process is often to stop ongoing harm, and fungi excel at this crucial work. In areas where soil has been exposed by disturbance, fungal threads rapidly colonize the bare earth, binding soil particles together and creating a living network that prevents erosion. This biological bandaging can stabilize exposed soil within days or weeks, preventing the loss of valuable topsoil that might otherwise wash away during heavy rains. But fungi don't just prevent further damage. They actively begin to repair existing harm. In areas where soil has been compacted by heavy machinery or trampling, fungal threads work to restore proper soil structure by creating new pathways for air and water movement. The growing networks of fungal hyphae physically push apart compacted soil particles while simultaneously binding them into stable aggregates, gradually restoring the porous, well-aerated structure that healthy soil requires. The chemical healing performed by fungi is equally remarkable. In soils that have been contaminated by pollutants or depleted of essential nutrients, fungi deploy an arsenal of biological tools to restore chemical balance. Some fungi specialize in breaking down toxic compounds, using their sophisticated enzyme systems to neutralize harmful chemicals and convert them into harmless byproducts. Others focus on concentrating and redistributing essential nutrients, gathering scarce resources from wide areas and concentrating them in zones where they're most needed for ecosystem recovery. Perhaps most remarkably, some fungi can actually extract valuable nutrients from contaminated soils while simultaneously sequestering harmful pollutants, essentially cleaning the soil while preparing it for the return of healthy plant communities. This bioremediation work often takes place so gradually and quietly that it goes completely unnoticed, yet it represents one of nature's most effective approaches to environmental restoration. The restoration of biological diversity is another crucial aspect of fungal healing work. In areas where disturbance has eliminated or reduced populations of soil organisms, fungi help to reestablish the complex communities of bacteria, protozoa, and microscopic animals that are essential for healthy soil function. The networks created by fungal growth provide habitat structure for these organisms, while the chemical compounds released by fungi help to create the environmental conditions they need to thrive. Fungi also serve as biological bridges that help to reconnect fragmented habitats. When disturbances create isolated patches of healthy ecosystem surrounded by damaged areas, fungal networks can grow across these damaged zones, carrying nutrients, information, and even genetic material between the isolated patches. This connectivity helps to maintain the health of surviving ecosystem fragments while simultaneously facilitating the spread of recovery into the damaged areas. The temporal aspects of fungal healing are particularly fascinating. Different species of fungi become active at different stages of the recovery process, creating a carefully orchestrated succession of healing activities that can span many decades. Early-stage healing fungi focus on rapid stabilization and the creation of basic growing conditions. Middle-stage species work on building soil depth and complexity, while late-stage fungi help to fine-tune the chemical and biological conditions needed for the return of mature forest communities. This succession of healing fungi is often so predictable that experienced ecologists can assess the stage of ecosystem recovery simply by identifying which fungal species are present and active in the soil. Each stage of healing creates conditions that favor the next stage, ensuring that the recovery process proceeds in an orderly fashion toward the restoration of mature, stable ecosystem conditions. The healing work extends beyond just the soil environment to include the restoration of proper relationships between different species. When disturbances disrupt the complex partnerships between fungi and plants, healing fungi work to reestablish these essential connections. They actively seek out the roots of colonizing plants and form new mycorrhizal partnerships, providing the newly arrived plants with the nutrient and water support they need to establish themselves in the recovering ecosystem. Some healing fungi demonstrate remarkable specificity in their restoration work, focusing their efforts on particular plant species that are especially important for ecosystem recovery. These fungi might concentrate on supporting the growth of nitrogen-fixing plants that can restore soil fertility, or they might prioritize species that are particularly effective at preventing erosion or providing habitat for wildlife. The scale of fungal healing work can be truly impressive. In areas affected by large-scale disturbances like volcanic eruptions or major forest fires, Fungal networks can coordinate recovery efforts across thousands of acres, sharing resources and information throughout the affected region. The underground fungal networks serve as a kind of ecological internet that allows different parts of the damaged ecosystem to communicate and coordinate their recovery efforts. Climate regulation represents another important aspect of fungal healing work. Through their effects on soil carbon storage and plant growth, fungi help to restore the climate-regulating functions of damaged ecosystems. The carbon sequestered in fungal biomass and stable organic matter helps to offset greenhouse gas emissions, while the restoration of healthy plant communities helps to regulate local temperature and moisture patterns. The healing work performed by fungi often involves remarkable feats of biological engineering that seem almost magical in their effectiveness. In areas where topsoil has been completely stripped away, certain fungi can begin the process of new soil formation by slowly weathering bedrock and accumulating organic matter. This process might take centuries to restore deep, fertile soil, but the patient persistence of fungi ensures that even the most severely damaged sites can eventually recover. Some of the most dramatic examples of fungal healing occur in areas contaminated by heavy metals or other toxic materials. Specialized fungi can absorb these harmful substances from the soil, concentrating them in their own tissues and effectively removing them from the environment. When these fungi complete their life cycles, the concentrated toxins can be harvested and disposed of safely, leaving behind cleaner soil that can support healthy plant and animal communities. The emotional and spiritual dimensions of fungal healing work are perhaps its most profound aspects. There is something deeply comforting about knowing that the earth possesses its own healing systems, biological mechanisms that respond to damage with patience, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to restoration. The work of healing fungi reminds us that recovery is always possible, that even the most severely damaged ecosystems carry within them the seeds of their own renewal. In areas where human activities have caused environmental damage, fungi often serve as the primary agents of healing, working quietly and persistently to undo the harm and restore natural processes. Their work proceeds without fanfare or recognition, driven by the simple biological imperative to create conditions suitable for life. Yet through their humble efforts, fungi demonstrate that healing is not just possible but inevitable, given sufficient time and the right conditions. As the forest night reaches its deepest point and the healing work of fungi continues in the darkness beneath our feet, there's profound peace in knowing that this ancient process of restoration and renewal continues regardless of our awareness or participation. The healing touch of fungi represents one of life's most beautiful expressions, the capacity to transform damage into opportunity, to convert chaos into order, and to ensure that the wounds inflicted on the living world are gradually but inevitably healed through the patient, persistent work of these remarkable organisms. In the profound stillness of the deepest night, when the forest has settled into its most peaceful rhythm, and even the gentlest night sounds have quieted to whispers, something extraordinary is happening in the microscopic spaces all around us. A constant stream of chemical conversations so sophisticated and nuanced that they rival any form of communication humans have ever developed. These molecular dialogues, carried out through the release and detection of countless different chemical compounds, represent one of nature's most elegant and efficient information systems, allowing organisms to share vital information about resources, threats, opportunities, and needs with a precision and subtlety that defies easy comprehension. To appreciate the complexity and beauty of these chemical conversations, imagine that you could somehow perceive the molecular signals that flow continuously through the forest air and soil. Thousands of different chemical messages being sent and received every second, creating an invisible network of information exchange that connects every living thing in the ecosystem. You would see streams of chemical signals flowing from plant leaves into the air, warning of insect attacks, or signaling successful defenses. You would observe underground rivers of molecular messages traveling through fungal networks, carrying news of resource discoveries, environmental changes, and collaborative opportunities. The vocabulary of this chemical language is staggeringly rich and diverse. Scientists have identified thousands of different chemical compounds that organisms use for communication, and new ones are discovered regularly as our understanding of biological signaling systems continues to expand. Each compound carries specific information, and the combinations and concentrations of different chemicals can convey complex, nuanced messages that would require paragraphs of human language to express accurately. Fungi are among the most fluent speakers of this chemical language, both as senders and receivers of molecular messages. Their extensive networks of threads that permeate soil and living tissues serve as a biological internet that carries chemical signals across vast distances with remarkable speed and accuracy. A single fungal network might simultaneously monitor and respond to hundreds of different chemical signals, processing this information and responding with their own chemical messages in an ongoing conversation that never stops. The process begins with detection systems of almost unimaginable sensitivity. Fungal threads are equipped with specialized receptor molecules that can detect the presence of specific chemical compounds at concentrations so low they approach the theoretical limits of detection. These biological sensors can distinguish between millions of different molecules, recognizing not just their basic chemical structure, but also subtle variations in molecular configuration that might indicate different sources or meanings. When a fungal thread detects a chemical signal of interest, the information is rapidly transmitted throughout the fungal network through a variety of mechanisms. Some signals trigger the immediate release of other chemical compounds that travel through the fungal network, like biological telegrams, alerting distant parts of the organism to local conditions. Other signals cause changes in the electrical activity of the fungal threads, creating bioelectric pulses that can travel through the network at speeds approaching those of nerve impulses in animals. The chemical messages themselves are marvels of molecular engineering. Many consist of complex organic molecules that are synthesized specifically for communication purposes, each one precisely designed to convey particular types of information. Some messages are simple and direct, chemical alarm signals that warn of immediate threats, or attraction compounds that draw beneficial organisms to specific locations. Others are remarkably sophisticated, carrying detailed information about environmental conditions, resource availability, or the identity and status of the sender. Plants engage in constant chemical conversations with their fungal partners, releasing specific compounds that communicate their nutritional needs, health status, and environmental stresses. When a plant is attacked by herbivorous insects, it releases chemical distress signals that travel through the air to nearby plants and down through its roots to the fungal networks in the soil. These chemical SOS calls can trigger defensive responses in neighboring plants and mobilize fungal networks to provide additional support to the stressed plant. The fungal response to these plant distress signals demonstrates the sophisticated nature of chemical communication in forest ecosystems. Different types of plant stress elicit different fungal responses, suggesting that the fungi can interpret the specific nature of threats from the chemical messages they receive. An attack by leaf-eating insects might trigger the fungal network to increase nutrient flow to help the plant produce defensive chemicals, while an attack by root-feeding pests might prompt the fungi to alter soil chemistry to make conditions less favorable for the attackers. The temporal aspects of chemical communication add another layer of complexity to these molecular conversations. Some chemical signals are designed for immediate action, breaking down quickly after they've served their purpose to prevent confusion or inappropriate responses. Others are intended as long-term signals that persist in the environment for hours, days, or even longer, providing ongoing information about stable environmental conditions. The seasonal timing of chemical communications follows complex patterns that reflect the changing needs and priorities of forest organisms throughout the year. During the spring growing season, chemical communications focus heavily on coordinating growth activities, sharing information about resource availability, and establishing new partnerships. Summer communications often emphasize defense coordination and resource sharing to help community members deal with environmental stresses. Fall signals frequently relate to preparation for winter dormancy and the storage of resources for survival during harsh conditions. The chemistry of these communications is influenced by environmental conditions in fascinating ways. Temperature affects both the rate at which chemical signals are produced and released and the speed at which they travel through air and soil. Humidity influences how long airborne chemical signals remain stable and detectable. Soil pH and chemistry affect which chemical compounds can be transmitted effectively through underground networks. Some of the most remarkable chemical conversations occur between different species that have co-evolved sophisticated communication protocols. Certain plants have developed the ability to produce chemical signals that specifically attract beneficial fungi while repelling harmful ones. In response, these fungi have evolved receptor systems that allow them to detect and respond to these species-specific signals, creating communication channels that facilitate the formation of mutually beneficial partnerships. The role of chemical communication in mediating competition and cooperation between different organisms is particularly fascinating. When resources are scarce, some fungi release chemical signals that can suppress the growth of competing species while simultaneously sending cooperative signals to compatible partners. These chemical negotiations can determine which species will dominate particular areas and how resources will be allocated within the community. Chemical communication also plays crucial roles in coordinating reproductive activities throughout forest ecosystems. Many fungi use chemical signals to coordinate their reproductive cycles, ensuring that compatible individuals release their reproductive structures at the same time to maximize the chances of successful reproduction. These chemical synchronization signals can coordinate reproductive activities across wide areas, creating spectacular displays of mushroom fruiting that seem to appear overnight across entire forest regions. The defensive applications of chemical communication are equally sophisticated. When harmful organisms are detected in an area, chemical alarm signals can rapidly spread throughout the fungal network and to connected plants, allowing the entire community to mobilize defenses before the threat has a chance to spread widely. Some chemical alarm signals can even trigger preemptive defensive responses in organisms that haven't yet been directly threatened, creating a kind of biological early warning system. Chemical communication systems also demonstrate remarkable abilities to adapt and evolve in response to changing environmental conditions. When new threats or opportunities arise in an ecosystem, organisms can sometimes develop new chemical signaling capabilities relatively quickly, creating novel communication channels that help them respond to novel challenges. This evolutionary flexibility in chemical communication helps to maintain the stability and resilience of ecosystem communities in the face of environmental change. The study of chemical communication in forest ecosystems has revealed that these molecular conversations are far more complex and sophisticated than scientists originally suspected. What was once thought to be a relatively simple exchange of basic chemical signals has proven to be an intricate network of information sharing that rivals the complexity of human communication systems. The realization that forests are engaged in constant chemical conversations has fundamentally changed our understanding of how ecosystems function and how different organisms coordinate their activities. Perhaps most remarkably, these chemical communication systems operate with a reliability and efficiency that human communication networks struggle to match. The biological internet created by fungal networks and chemical signaling rarely experiences the equivalent of system crashes or communication failures that plague electronic networks. The redundancy built into these biological systems, with multiple pathways for message transmission and backup communication protocols, ensures that vital information continues to flow even when parts of the network are damaged or disrupted. As the night reaches its darkest hour and the forest settles into its deepest quiet, these chemical conversations continue with the same reliability and sophistication they have demonstrated for millions of years. In the molecular realm that exists all around us, but remains largely invisible to human perception, an ancient and sophisticated communication network, continues to coordinate the activities of countless organisms, ensuring that the forest community can respond effectively to challenges and opportunities through the timeless language of chemistry. In the hushed hours before dawn, when the forest exists in that peaceful state between the activities of night and the stirring of day, there is something profoundly comforting about contemplating one of fungi's most essential and beautiful roles, their work as guardians of ecological balance. Like wise stewards who have been entrusted with the care of something precious beyond measure, fungi constantly monitor, adjust, and maintain the delicate equilibria that keep forest ecosystems healthy and stable across the vast timescales of ecological time. To understand this guardian role, imagine the forest ecosystem as an incredibly complex musical composition being performed by thousands of musicians, each playing their own part in a symphony of life that has been unfolding for millions of years. In this grand performance, fungi serve as both conductors and tuning instruments, constantly listening to the overall harmony and making subtle adjustments to ensure that no single voice becomes too dominant and that all the various melodies blend together in perfect ecological harmony. The work of maintaining balance begins at the most fundamental level with the regulation of nutrient cycles throughout the ecosystem. Like careful accountants managing a complex budget, fungi monitor the flow of essential elements, nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, and dozens of others, ensuring that nutrients are available where and when they're needed while preventing harmful accumulations that could disrupt ecosystem function. This nutrient management requires constant vigilance and adjustment, as conditions change seasonally, annually, and across longer cycles that span decades or centuries. When nutrients become too concentrated in particular areas, fungi respond by redirecting flows to distribute resources more evenly throughout the ecosystem. During periods when certain nutrients become scarce, fungal networks can mobilize stored reserves or increase the efficiency of nutrient capture and recycling to maintain adequate supplies for ecosystem function. This dynamic management of nutrient flows helps prevent the boom and bust cycles that can destabilize ecosystems and threaten the survival of community members. The regulation of plant populations represents another crucial aspect of fungi's guardian role. Through their selective partnerships with different plant species, fungi can influence which plants thrive in particular locations and which struggle to establish themselves. By providing enhanced support to some plants while withholding assistance from others, fungal networks help maintain the plant diversity that is essential for ecosystem stability and resilience. This population regulation is particularly important in preventing any single plant species from becoming so dominant that it excludes other species and reduces ecosystem diversity. When aggressive or invasive plants threaten to overwhelm a plant community, fungi often respond by reducing their support for these problem species while increasing assistance to native plants that help maintain ecological balance. This selective support helps preserve the diversity of plant communities that provides the foundation for all other forms of life in the ecosystem. Fungi also serve as guardians of soil health, constantly monitoring and adjusting the physical, chemical, and biological conditions that determine soil's capacity to support plant life. They regulate soil pH levels, manage the balance between different types of soil organisms, and maintain the soil structure that allows for proper water and air movement. When soil conditions begin to drift away from optimal ranges, fungi respond with corrective actions that gradually restore proper soil function. The management of water relationships throughout the ecosystem represents another essential aspect of fungi's guardian work. Through their extensive networks, fungi help regulate the movement and distribution of water, ensuring that moisture is available where it's needed while preventing waterlogging or drought stress in vulnerable areas. During dry periods, fungal networks can transport water from deeper soil layers or from areas with better water access to support plants experiencing drought stress. During wet periods, the same networks help drain excess water away from root zones that might otherwise become waterlogged. Fungi serve as guardians against the spread of diseases and harmful organisms throughout forest ecosystems. Their extensive monitoring networks allow them to detect the presence of pathogenic bacteria, viruses, and harmful fungi at very early stages, often before these threats have a chance to cause significant damage. Once detected, fungal networks can coordinate community-wide defensive responses, sharing protective chemical compounds and mobilizing immune responses that help contain and eliminate threats before they can spread widely. The guardian role extends to the regulation of decomposition rates throughout the ecosystem. Fungi carefully control the pace at which organic matter breaks down, ensuring that nutrients are released at rates that match the needs of living plants rather than being lost from the ecosystem through too rapid decomposition. During periods when large amounts of organic matter accumulate, following windstorms, insect outbreaks, or seasonal leaf fall, fungi can increase their decomposition activities to prevent the buildup of materials that might create fire hazards or harbor harmful organisms. Conversely, during periods when organic matter inputs are low, fungi can slow decomposition rates to conserve existing organic matter and maintain soil organic content. This dynamic regulation of decomposition helps maintain the organic matter levels that are essential for soil health and ecosystem productivity, while preventing the accumulation of materials that might disrupt ecosystem function. Climate regulation represents one of fungi's most far-reaching guardian responsibilities. Through their effects on carbon storage, water cycling, and plant growth, fungal networks help maintain the local climate conditions that support forest ecosystem health. The carbon sequestered in fungal biomass and stable organic matter helps regulate atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, while the improved plant growth facilitated by fungal partnerships enhances the forest's capacity for carbon capture and storage. Fungi also help regulate local temperature and humidity patterns through their effects on soil insulation, plant transpiration, and forest canopy development. By maintaining healthy plant communities with optimal canopy structure, fungal networks help create the stable microclimatic conditions that support the full diversity of forest organisms. The guardian role includes monitoring and responding to long-term environmental changes that might threaten ecosystem stability. As climate patterns shift, pollution levels change, or new species arrive in the ecosystem, fungi continuously assess these changes and adjust their management strategies accordingly. This adaptive management helps ecosystems maintain their essential functions even as environmental conditions change around them. Perhaps most remarkably, fungi serve as guardians of evolutionary processes within ecosystems, helping to maintain the genetic diversity and adaptive capacity that allow plant and animal communities to evolve and adapt to changing conditions. By facilitating gene flow between plant populations through their network connections and by creating diverse environmental conditions that support different genetic variants, fungal networks help maintain the evolutionary potential that ensures ecosystem resilience across geological timescales. The temporal scales over which fungi maintain ecological balance are truly impressive. While human management systems typically operate on timescales of years or decades, fungal guardian systems have been maintaining ecosystem balance for millions of years through ice ages and warm periods, through major extinction events and evolutionary radiations, through countless cycles of climate change and ecological disruption. This long-term perspective allows fungal systems to respond to disturbances and changes with a patience and wisdom that shorter-lived management systems cannot match. When ecosystems are disrupted by natural disasters, disease outbreaks, or other challenges, fungal networks often maintain the essential infrastructure and biological memory needed for rapid recovery once conditions improve. The coordination required for effective ecosystem guardianship is achieved through the same sophisticated communication networks we explored earlier. Fungal networks continuously share information about local conditions throughout the ecosystem, allowing them to coordinate their management activities and respond to emerging challenges before they become serious threats to ecosystem stability. This distributed management system is remarkably resilient to disruption, with multiple backup systems and redundant pathways that ensure continued ecosystem management even when parts of the fungal network are damaged or destroyed. The decentralized nature of fungal management systems means that there are no single points of failure that could compromise the entire ecosystem stability. The guardian work of fungi operates largely below the threshold of human awareness, proceeding quietly and efficiently without fanfare or recognition. Yet this invisible management is absolutely essential for the continued health and stability of terrestrial ecosystems. Without the constant vigilance and adjustment provided by fungal networks, forest ecosystems would quickly lose their balance and collapse into simplified, less stable states that could support only a fraction of their current diversity and productivity. As the first hints of dawn begin to appear on the horizon, and the forest prepares for another day of growth and activity, the guardian work of fungi continues with the same reliability and dedication it has shown for countless millions of years. In the quiet spaces beneath our feet and around every root and leaf, these patient stewards continue their essential work of monitoring, adjusting, and maintaining the delicate balances that make terrestrial life possible, ensuring that the symphony of forest life continues to play in perfect harmony through all the changes and challenges that time may bring. As the first gentle light of dawn begins to filter through the forest canopy, painting the world in soft pastels of gold and green, we arrive at the contemplation of perhaps the most profound and beautiful aspect of the fungal kingdom: their role as the eternal gardeners of life's endless cycle of renewal. In this quiet hour between night and day, as the forest awakens to another chapter in its ancient story, there is something deeply peaceful about reflecting on how fungi serve as the living bridges that connect death to life, ending to beginning, completion to renewal, in an endless dance that has sustained terrestrial existence for hundreds of millions of years. To truly appreciate the magnitude of this eternal cycle, imagine that you could somehow step outside of human time and observe the forest from the perspective of geological ages, watching not days or seasons, but centuries and millennia unfold like the pages of an infinite book. From this vast temporal vantage point, you would see that what appears to us as a static landscape is actually in constant motion, with every element continuously cycling through states of growth, maturity, death, and rebirth in patterns so grand and enduring that they approach the eternal. At the heart of this great cycling lies the patient, persistent work of fungi, organisms so perfectly adapted to their role as facilitators of transformation that they have become indispensable to the continuation of life itself. Every molecule of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and countless other elements that moves through terrestrial ecosystems passes through fungal networks multiple times during its journey, being transformed, transported, and recycled in processes that ensure nothing is ever truly lost, that every ending becomes a new beginning. The carbon cycle, perhaps the most fundamental of all biogeochemical cycles, depends absolutely on the work of fungi for its continuation. Every piece of organic matter that falls to the forest floor, every leaf, every fallen branch, every flower that has completed its moment of beauty becomes raw material for fungal transformation. Through their patient work of decomposition, fungi release the carbon that was captured from the atmosphere by photosynthesis, making it available once again for new plant growth and continuing the ancient rhythm of carbon moving between earth and sky. But this is not a simple mechanical process of breakdown and release. The fungal transformation of organic matter is more like a sophisticated alchemy that preserves the essence of what has been while preparing it for what will be. Some carbon is released quickly back to the atmosphere, where it can be recaptured by photosynthesis within days or weeks. Other carbon is processed into more stable forms that remain in the soil for decades, centuries, or even millennia, serving as a long-term reservoir that helps stabilize ecosystem function across vast timescales. The nitrogen cycle, equally essential for life, follows similar patterns of fungal facilitation and transformation. Fungi break down the complex nitrogen-containing compounds in dead organic matter, converting them into forms that plants can absorb and use for their own growth. Some of this nitrogen moves quickly through the ecosystem, being recycled multiple times within a single growing season. Other nitrogen becomes incorporated into long-term storage pools that provide a stable supply for ecosystem productivity across multiple generations of plant and animal life. Through these cycling processes, fungi serve as the living memory of ecosystems, preserving information about past productivity and making it available for future growth. The nutrients stored in fungal biomass and in the stable organic matter they create represent a kind of ecological savings account, accumulated during periods of abundance and available to support ecosystem function during times of scarcity. The temporal patterns of these cycles reflect the seasonal rhythms that govern all terrestrial life. During the productive months of spring and summer, when plants are actively growing and producing large amounts of organic matter, fungi work to process the continuous input of fresh material while building up their own biomass and expanding their networks. During the dormant months of autumn and winter, fungal activity shifts toward the processing of accumulated organic matter and the slow release of stored nutrients that will fuel the next season's growth. But the eternal cycle operates on timescales far beyond the seasonal, encompassing patterns that span decades, centuries, and geological ages. Some of the organic matter processed by fungi comes from trees that may be hundreds of years old, carrying nutrients that have been cycling through the ecosystem since before human civilization began. Other material processed by fungi will become part of stable soil organic matter that may persist for thousands of years, providing a foundation for countless future generations of forest life. The spatial dimensions of the eternal cycle are equally impressive. Fungal networks can transport nutrients across vast distances, carrying resources from areas where they're abundant to locations where they're needed for growth and development. A molecule of phosphorus extracted from decomposing organic matter in one part of the forest might travel through fungal networks for hundreds of meters before being delivered to a young seedling that needs it for root development. This spatial redistribution ensures that nutrients are used efficiently throughout the ecosystem and helps maintain productivity across the entire landscape. The role of fungi in facilitating genetic and evolutionary cycles adds another layer of profundity to their work as eternal gardeners. By supporting the health and diversity of plant communities, fungal networks help maintain the genetic diversity that allows ecosystems to adapt and evolve in response to changing environmental conditions. The partnerships between fungi and plants create environmental conditions that can favor different genetic variants at different times, ensuring that evolutionary potential is preserved across generations. Fungi also facilitate the dispersal of genetic material through their networks, sometimes carrying genetic information from one plant to another through their hyphal connections. This genetic transfer can help maintain genetic diversity within plant populations and may contribute to the rapid spread of beneficial genetic variants throughout plant communities. The eternal cycle includes the fungal life cycles themselves, with each species following its own patterns of growth, reproduction, and death that contribute to the larger patterns of ecosystem cycling. Some fungi complete their entire life cycle within a single season, rapidly processing organic matter and releasing nutrients before producing spores that will begin the cycle anew. Others persist for decades or centuries, slowly building vast networks that serve as long-term infrastructure for ecosystem function. The reproductive cycles of fungi often synchronize with seasonal and environmental patterns in ways that optimize their contribution to ecosystem cycling. Many fungi time their reproduction to coincide with periods when environmental conditions are optimal for spore dispersal and establishment, ensuring that new fungal individuals will be available to continue the work of processing and cycling when it's most needed. The connection between fungal cycles and the broader cycles of forest succession creates patterns that operate on even longer timescales. As forests mature and age, the fungal communities that support them undergo their own succession, with different species dominating at different stages of forest development. These fungal succession patterns help drive the larger patterns of forest change, influencing which plant species will dominate at different stages and how quickly forests will recover from disturbances. Climate cycles that operate on timescales of decades or centuries are both influenced by and reflected in fungal cycling processes. During periods of favorable climate, increased plant productivity leads to greater inputs of organic matter for fungal processing, which in turn supports enhanced nutrient cycling and even greater ecosystem productivity. During less favorable periods, the nutrients stored in fungal biomass and soil organic matter help sustain ecosystem function until more favorable conditions return. The eternal cycle maintained by fungi extends beyond individual ecosystems to encompass regional and global patterns of biogeochemical cycling. The carbon sequestered in forest soils through fungal activity contributes to global carbon storage, helping to regulate atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations and climate patterns. The nutrients cycled through fungal networks in one ecosystem may eventually be transported to distant ecosystems through atmospheric, hydrological, or geological processes, contributing to productivity in locations far from where they were originally processed. Perhaps most remarkably, the eternal cycle facilitated by fungi connects the present to both the deep past and the distant future in ways that approach the mystical. The carbon atoms being processed by fungi today may have been part of ancient forests that grew millions of years ago, or they may become part of forests that will grow millions of years in the future. Through their work of transformation and cycling, fungi serve as the living links that connect all terrestrial life across the vast reaches of geological time. The wisdom embodied in these eternal cycles reflects principles that transcend individual organisms or ecosystems, touching on fundamental truths about the nature of existence itself. The cycles maintained by fungi demonstrate that death is not an ending, but a transformation, that destruction is inseparable from creation, that every ending contains the seeds of new beginning. In their patient work of decomposition and renewal, fungi teach us that nothing is ever truly lost, that all of life participates in patterns of change and continuity that extend far beyond any individual existence. As the morning light strengthens and the forest fully awakens to another day of growth and activity, the eternal cycles facilitated by fungi continue with the same reliability and purpose they have shown since terrestrial life began. In the quiet spaces where death becomes life and endings become beginnings, these ancient organisms continue their sacred work of transformation and renewal, ensuring that the great cycles of existence will continue to turn, bringing new life from old, new possibilities from apparent endings, new growth from what appear to be loss. As the dawn light grows warmer and more golden, illuminating the forest in its gentle morning radiance, we arrive at perhaps the most profound realization of all, that everything we have explored together through this quiet night represents just the beginning of understanding the true scope and beauty of the fungal kingdom. Like travelers who have climbed to the top of a mountain only to discover that it was merely the first peak in an endless range of possibilities, we find ourselves at the threshold of recognizing that the fungal networks we have contemplated are part of something even more vast and magnificent, an infinite web of connection that extends beyond any single forest, beyond any single ecosystem, ultimately embracing the entire living planet in patterns of relationship so complex and beautiful that they approach the mystical. If you could somehow step back far enough to perceive the Earth from the perspective of deep space and deep time, with eyes sensitive enough to see the fungal networks that permeate every landscape, you would witness something that would fundamentally change your understanding of what our planet truly is. The continents would appear to glow with an intricate tracery of biological connections, fungal networks threading through every forest, every grassland, every patch of soil where life exists. These networks would pulse and flow with the rhythms of seasons and years, creating patterns of such beauty and complexity that they would rival the aurora borealis or the spiral arms of galaxies. This planetary web of fungal connection operates as a kind of global nervous system for the Earth, carrying information and resources across vast distances and coordinating responses to environmental changes on continental scales. When forests in one region experience stress from drought or disease, The fungal networks can communicate this information through their underground channels, potentially triggering adaptive responses in distant ecosystems that help maintain global ecological stability. The temporal dimensions of this infinite web stretch across scales that humble human comprehension. Some fungal individuals have been growing and connecting for thousands of years, their networks predating the rise and fall of civilizations, carrying biological memory that spans ice ages and climate shifts that occurred long before human history began. These ancient networks serve as living libraries that contain information about environmental conditions and ecological relationships that extends far beyond what any human record could preserve. Within this vast web, every forest, every meadow, every garden becomes a node in a planetary network of such sophistication that it challenges our most advanced understanding of complex systems. The communication protocols that allow fungal networks in different continents to coordinate their activities operate according to principles that scientists are only beginning to glimpse, suggesting forms of planetary-scale intelligence that transcend anything previously imagined. The chemical signals that flow through this global fungal web carry information not just about local conditions, but about planetary patterns, atmospheric changes, ocean currents, celestial cycles, and long-term climate trends. Through their collective processing of this information, fungal networks contribute to the planet's ability to maintain the stable conditions necessary for life, serving as biological thermostats, chemical balancers, and environmental regulators on a scale that encompasses the entire biosphere. Your own connection to this infinite web extends far beyond what you might initially imagine. Every breath you take includes molecules that have been processed through fungal networks. Every meal you eat contains nutrients that have been cycled through fungal systems. Every step you take on the earth connects you to soil that has been shaped and maintained by fungal activity. You are not separate from this web, but intimately woven into it, part of a planetary community that includes not just all visible life, but the vast fungal networks that make that life possible. The realization of this connection brings with it a profound sense of belonging and purpose. You are not an isolated individual struggling alone in an indifferent universe, but a conscious participant in a planetary web of such beauty and intelligence that it approaches the sacred. Every choice you make, every action you take, ripples through this web of connection, contributing to the vast ongoing experiment of life on Earth. The wisdom embedded in this infinite web offers guidance for how we might live in greater harmony with the natural world. The fungal networks demonstrate that cooperation yields greater benefits than competition, that patience and persistence accomplish more than force and speed, that the health of the whole is inseparable from the health of each part. These lessons, written in the very structure of terrestrial life, suggest ways of being that could transform human civilization and help us find our proper place within the larger community of life. As you rest now in the growing warmth of the morning sun, feeling perhaps the gentle fatigue that comes from a night of deep exploration and discovery, allow yourself to sense your connection to this infinite web that surrounds and includes you. Feel the soil beneath your feet as the living tissue of a planetary organism. Feel the air you breathe as part of atmospheric systems that fungal networks help regulate. Feel your own life as one beautiful note in a symphony that has been playing for billions of years. Rest well in this understanding, dear explorer of the hidden kingdom. Let the knowledge of the infinite web bring you peace and comfort, knowing that you are held within patterns of connection so vast and enduring that they touch the eternal. The fungal networks that we have explored together will continue their patient work of connection and care long after this night's journey ends, weaving the web of life ever more beautifully, ensuring that the great community of existence continues to flourish and grow. Sleep peacefully now, surrounded by the invisible threads of connection that link you to every tree in every forest, every flower in every meadow, every grain of soil on the living earth. In your dreams, may you continue to explore the infinite web of life, discovering new depths of beauty and connection in the mysterious kingdom that exists all around us, always present, always working, always weaving the patterns that make life itself possible. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler in the infinite web. May your rest be deep and your awakening gentle, and may you carry with you always the knowledge that you are part of something vast and beautiful beyond measure. The eternal, infinite web of life that fungi have been weaving since terrestrial life began, and will continue weaving until the end of time itself.